All right, so we're diving into Samuel P. Huntington's Clash of Civilizations.
Yeah.
And you guys have sent us like a ton of stuff on this.
Yeah, it's a popular one.
Excerpts and articles, and
Yeah.
even like I saw some of your own notes in there.
Definitely.
So it seems like you really want to wrap your head around this whole theory.
For sure.
So that's what we're going to try and do, right?
Absolutely.
We're going to go chapter by chapter, break down Huntington's arguments.
Yeah.
And we're going to start like right at the beginning
Okay.
with how he even defines a civilization.
Yeah.
Like, what is he even talking about?
Right.
And then from there, we'll explore how he sees these cultural identities shaping like the whole future of global politics, right?
It's a big one.
So whether you're just dipping your toes into this or you've already like gone deep, this deep dive should give you some serious knowledge about Huntington's, pretty thought-provoking.
For sure.
And some would say controversial thesis.
Yeah, definitely controversial.
So right off the bat, I was struck by how Huntington just kind of shakes things up.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he really challenges those, like, traditional views of international relations,
Absolutely.
Like, he comes in and says, the world after the Cold War, totally different ballgame.
Yep.
Not about ideology anymore. It's not about
Right.
communism versus democracy.
Yeah.
He's like, it's not even just about, like, economics. He's like, it's about culture now.
Culture's at the heart of it.
Okay, so he's saying that culture is, like, the main driver of global politics.
It's the lens through which everything's seen,
I mean, that's a pretty big statement.
Yeah, bold statement.
So to even, like, get into that,
Right.
we got to understand how he's even defining civilizations, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, what is he even talking about?
He's talking about, like, the broadest level of cultural identity.
Okay.
Right. So it's share history, language, religion, customs, even institutions. And he argues that these common threads, they bind people together in a way that goes beyond just, like, national borders.
Yeah, I see. So it's not just like, what country are you from?
Right.
But like this deeper sense of
deep belonging to
the larger group.
Exactly.
I see, okay.
And he identifies, like, the major civilizations that he sees in the world. So Western Islamic Sinic, which is Chinese, Hindu, Japanese, Orthodox, Latin American, and possibly African.
Wow.
Each one distinct set of values, beliefs, traditions.
So that's a pretty big framework, right?
It's a huge framework.
So, like, why does he think that these civilizations are going to clash?
Well, his argument is globalization.
Okay.
It brings them into closer contact, right? But closer contact also kind of intensifies awareness of their differences.
Okay.
And that leads to friction. And then, conflict. Yeah. He points to, like, in the 1990s, places like Bosnia, Chechnya, Kashmir, all areas where he saw these fault lines between civilizations erupting into violence.
So it's like these cultural differences. They create like these pressure points.
Yeah, pressure points is a good way to put it.
And that's where conflict is most likely to
explode.
Explode, exactly.
There, I gotcha.
And he makes the point that these fault line conflicts, they're more intense, they're harder to resolve.
Right.
Because they're rooted in these like fundamental cultural differences.
Right.
That go way deeper than just political or economic disagreements.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see how this is all, like, connecting. He's basically saying that these deep-rooted cultural differences are going to be, like, the main source of conflict in the future. But hold on, isn't the world getting, like, more interconnected?
Right.
Not less? Like, don't we see more, like, cultural exchange?
It's a good point.
And mixing. All the time. Yeah. And Huntington acknowledges that there's increased interaction between civilizations.
Right.
But he says instead of leading to, like, a blending of cultures, it often reinforces the differences and creates that sense of us versus them.
Right. Okay.
He thinks that globalization actually makes people more aware of their own civilizational identity.
Okay.
And so they cling to it more tightly.
So instead of creating like a global melting pot, it's actually like
more like a mosaic.
Deepening the divides.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's an interesting argument.
Pretty, yeah. Counterintuitive.
Very much so.
So, I mean,
it's generated a lot of debate. Yeah.
Whether you agree with him or not, like he's making us think about culture.
Yeah.
In a way that like those traditional theories, they don't really touch.
Totally overlook it. Yeah.
I can see why this book has been so influential. Even if it's like controversial, he's presenting like a pretty dramatic shift in how we view the world,
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift.
Yeah, totally.
And that shift, it becomes even clearer when you look at what he says about power.
Okay, here's where it gets really juicy, right?
Right.
He's not just talking about cultural clashes.
Uh-huh.
He's talking about like a major power shift.
Yeah, a global power shift.
Right. So he's saying the West's dominance, which we've kind of taken for granted for
it's been the norm, right?
Centuries, right?
Yeah.
Is actually on the decline.
Yeah, he says it's fading.
He points to like rise of Asian economies.
Exactly.
The population boom in the Islamic world.
Yeah.
And like what he sees as a resurgence of like non-Western cultures.
Yeah, a resurgence of values,
So he's not just saying like the West is going to face like challenges.
Yeah.
He's saying like their position as a top dog is fading.
It's fundamentally shifting.
That's a bold prediction.
It is,
like what evidence does he give for that?
Well, he looks at like population growth, economic output, military capabilities.
So like hard data.
Hard data.
And he's like, this shows a clear trend.
Trend away from the West.
Okay.
Towards other civilizations, especially Asia.
So we're talking like a fundamental shift.
Fundamental shift.
In the global power structure.
Absolutely.
With the West like losing its grip.
Yeah, no longer calling the shots.
And he's tying this directly to
the rise of these other civilizations.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is painting a very different picture of the future.
It is.
Than we might have imagined.
Yeah.
Even a few decades ago,
Absolutely.
A future where the West isn't calling the shots.
Yeah.
But just one player.
One among many.
Among many. And these cultural differences that he's talking about, they're not just like background noise.
No.
They're potentially like the main driver.
The main drivers.
Of conflict and cooperation.
Yeah, that's the core of his argument.
In this new world.
It's a new world.
This is heavy stuff.
It is.
And then he introduces this idea of torn countries.
Oh, yeah.
Which is fascinating.
Yeah, torn countries.
So tell me more about this.
Well, he uses it to describe nations that are caught between civilizations, struggling to define their own identity, pulled in different directions, trying to reconcile these like competing cultural influences.
So like caught between two worlds.
Caught between two worlds, exactly.
I could see how that would create like a lot of tension, maybe even instability.
Right.
What kind of countries are we even talking about here?
He gives examples like Turkey, Mexico, Russia, countries that are kind of geographically or culturally situated on the edges of different civilizations.
I'll see.
And they're wrestling with that question of where do we belong?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You can almost like feel that tension playing out in some of these places. Yeah. Like they're trying to figure out which cultural club they want to join.
Right.
But it's not an easy choice.
It's not a simple choice at all.
And sometimes they're not even welcome.
Sometimes they're not even welcome.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he argues that this struggle to define their civilizational identity, it can lead to like internal conflicts, political instability, even conflict with other states.
So these torn countries, they're not just dealing with their own internal struggles.
No.
But they're also becoming like...
They can become flashpoints.
Flashpoints for conflict between these...
Between the larger civilizations.
Larger civilizations, yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like a recipe for trouble.
It can be.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. So we've got...
It's a lot.
A declining West, clashing civilizations, countries caught in the middle.
Yeah. It's a complex picture he's painting.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
But before we get like too overwhelmed,
right,
I think we need to dig deeper into these fault lines.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like how does he actually see these cultural clashes playing out?
Yeah, like what does it look like?
In the real world.
In the real world.
You know?
Yeah, that's a great question.
That's where we're going to pick up.
That's where we're going next.
In the next part of this deep dive.
Absolutely.
We're going to explore how these fault lines, as he sees them, could actually manifest.
Yeah.
In specific conflicts.
Yeah.
And shape the dynamics of global politics.
Absolutely.
In the years to come.
Big questions.
All right. Sounds like we're just getting started.
Yeah, we're just getting warmed up.
We'll be back soon to unpack even more of Huntington's, thought-provoking ideas.
Absolutely. Welcome back to our deep dive into Huntington's Clash of Civilizations.
Yeah, we're back.
We're back.
You guys have been,
You've been digging deep, yeah.
Digging deep.
With all those sources you sent in.
Into this theory with your, stack of sources, and we're going through it.
We're unpacking it.
Piece by piece.
Piece by piece.
Last time, we explored, his central argument. Right?
Yeah, that after the Cold War, it's culture, these big civilizational identities.
That's what's shaping global politics.
That's the driving force.
And he paints this picture of these, cultural fault lines running through the world.
Yeah, these fault lines.
With torn countries stuck in the middle.
Stuck right in the middle.
And he also argues that the West's dominance is fading.
Yeah, which really shakes things up.
Really shakes up the traditional view, but how does he see these fault lines actually, leading to conflict?
That's where he brings in this concept of kin-country rallying.
Kin-country rallying, yeah. I remember that from our prep.
Yeah.
Remind me, how did he define that?
It's like a kind of cultural solidarity. He argues that when conflicts erupt along these civilizational fault lines, countries are more likely to support groups from their own civilization, their own kin, even if it risks escalating the situation.
So it's not just, about national interests anymore.
It goes deeper.
But, this deeper sense of, cultural loyalty.
A sense of loyalties.
That pulls them into these conflicts.
Yeah, pulls them in, yeah.
Wow.
He argues that these cultural ties, they run deep. And they can override other considerations, leading to this kind of chain reaction, where conflicts can escalate very quickly and draw in more and more actors.
Wow.
It's almost like a global family feud where you see these long-standing rivalries and allegiances coming to the forefront.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah.
It definitely makes these fault line conflicts seem even more volatile.
They are. They can be very volatile.
Does he give any real-world examples of how this kin-country rallying has actually played out?
He points to the conflict in Bosnia as a prime example. You had Serbs, Croats, Bosnian Muslims, all involved in this, very complex conflict.
Yeah.
But then you had external actors getting involved based on their own civilizational ties.
So it wasn't just a local thing.
No.
But it drew in...
It drew in other countries.
Other countries based on
these broader connections.
These broader cultural connections.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So Germany, Austria, the Vatican, they backed the Croats, while Russia and Greece supported the Serbs.
Okay.
And then the Islamic world rallied behind the Bosnian Muslims.
Wow. So this, turned what might have been a localized...
Yeah, a contained conflict.
The contained conflict.
Became much larger.
Into a much larger,
regional one.
Regional conflict.
Yeah.
It's almost like these countries felt this sense of...
Obligation
to support...
To support their kin.
Their kin, even if it meant getting entangled in this.
A messy situation.
Messy, dangerous situation.
Absolutely.
So these conflicts, fueled by this kin-country rallying...
Yeah.
They have the potential to escalate and spread.
Yeah, that's the concern.
Very quickly.
That's his big concern.
Wow.
He's arguing that in a world where these civilizational identities are becoming more prominent, this kind of rallying, it's going to become more common.
Right.
And it could lead to this cascade of conflicts that destabilize entire regions.
Wow.
Or even the world.
He's not just talking about skirmishes along these fault lines, but
major conflicts.
Major conflicts.
That draw in whole civilizations.
That's pretty sobering.
It is.
And he also emphasizes that these fault lines aren't static.
They're not static. They can shift.
They can shift.
They can evolve as circumstances change.
Okay.
And as countries kind of redefine their own civilizational identities.
So they're like earthquake zones,
Stick the analogies.
They're dangerous.
Yeah.
But you never know.
You don't know when or where.
When or where the next big one's going to hit.
Exactly. And he argues that understanding these fault lines and the dynamics of kin-country rallying, that's essential for navigating the complexities of global politics in this new era.
Okay. So we need to be aware of these, potential flashpoints.
Absolutely.
And understand how these cultural ties can influence how countries behave.
Yeah.
But doesn't he also talk about core states?
Yeah, core states, another key piece
It's like, what role
of his theory.
do they play in all of this?
He describes them as the dominant powers within each civilization.
Okay.
The ones that hold the most sway and often kind of set the agenda for their cultural group.
So for the West, that would be like the U.S.
The United States, exactly.
Right.
And for the Cynic civilization, it would be China. And these core states, he says, play a crucial role in shaping the dynamics between civilizations.
So they have like a lot of influence over how these cultural fault lines
Huge influence.
actually play out.
Yeah, their actions, their relationships with other core states, they can either exacerbate tensions or help to manage them.
Okay.
They can choose to emphasize cooperation, or they can fuel conflict by, aligning with their kin against other civilizations.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
They're like the big players in a global game of chess.
Yeah.
And their moves can have a huge impact.
A huge impact.
On the whole board.
On the whole board, yeah. And he suggests that the relationships between these core states will be a major factor in determining whether the future will be marked by conflict or cooperation.
So we need to understand the fault lines.
Yeah.
The kin-country rallying. The role of these core states.
That's a lot.
He's painting a pretty complex picture. But does he offer, like, any solutions?
He does.
Is there a way for the West or any civilization to, like, navigate this potentially volatile New World Order?
He does, and that's where we'll delve into the final chapter of this deep dive.
Okay, I'm ready.
He doesn't shy away from the challenges,
right,
but he does offer some strategies for managing these cultural differences
Go ahead.
and avoiding a catastrophic clash of civilizations.
All right, let's hear it.
Well,
What does he say?
Well, his advice can be boiled down to, like, 3 main points.
Okay, I'm ready.
First, he says, the West needs to wake up.
Okay.
Smell the coffee.
Okay.
He argues that Western civilization, it needs to shed its universalist pretensions.
Okay.
This idea that its values, its systems, they're the model for the rest of the world, and they should be spread far and wide.
Okay.
So less preaching from the West, more respect for other ways of doing things.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Huntington's Clash of Civilizations.
Yeah.
We've gone through his main arguments about how he sees these cultural identities shaping global politics.
Yeah.
The rise of these fault lines.
Yeah.
The concept of kin-country rallying.
Big one.
The decline of the West and the role of these powerful core states.
Those core states.
It's a lot to process.
It's a lot to unpack.
But I think we're ready for the big question.
Yeah.
Like, does Huntington offer any solutions?
Right.
Is there any way to, like, prevent this clash of civilizations from becoming, like, a self-fulfilling prophecy?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Huntington, even though he paints this, like, kind of bleak picture of the future, he does offer some advice, some strategies for navigating this new world order.
Okay.
But be warned, they're not always easy to swallow, especially for the West.
Okay, I'm ready for the tough love. Lay it on us. What does Huntington prescribe for a world on the brink of, like, cultural clash?
His advice can be boiled down to, like, 3 main points.
Okay.
First, he says the West needs to, like, wake up and smell the coffee.
Okay.
He argues that Western civilization needs to shed its universalist pretensions.
Okay, so
that's the idea that its values and systems are the model for the rest of the world, and they should be, like, spread far and wide.
So he's saying the West needs to, like, back off a bit.
Yeah.
Stop trying to, like, impose his vision on everyone else.
Exactly.
Like, this is how you should be doing things.
Right. He thinks that this kind of universalist thinking is outdated.
Okay.
Even dangerous in a world where other civilizations are rising in power.
Right.
Asserting their own values.
Right.
He argues it leads to resentment, resistance, and ultimately
conflict. More conflict.
That makes sense if you're constantly telling other cultures they're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
It's bound to create some friction.
So less preaching from the West.
Less preaching.
More respect for, like, more ways of doing things.
Absolutely.
What's his second point?
His second piece of advice about understanding.
Okay.
He argues that the West needs to make a serious effort to understand the values, the motivations, the perspectives of other civilizations.
Okay.
He says you can't effectively deal with someone if you don't
understand where they're coming from.
Understand where they're coming from. Exactly.
So it sounds like he's calling for, like, a major shift in mindset.
A major shift.
Moving away from this, like, us versus them
that binary
mentality towards a more like nuanced and empathetic view.
A more nuanced view,
of other cultures.
And he argues that seeing the world through the lens of civilizations, it doesn't mean seeing it as a battlefield. It means seeing it as like this complex tapestry of different cultures with their own like strengths and weaknesses.
Less judgment, more understanding.
More understanding, yeah.
It makes sense, but it also sounds like a pretty tall order.
It is.
Especially in a world where, like, information and misinformation
absolutely
travels so fast.
At the speed of light?
Yeah.
It's not easy.
But he's saying it's, like, essential.
It's essential.
If you want to avoid this
catastrophic
clash of civilizations.
Yeah.
And this brings us to his third
point.
And maybe most important point.
I think it's the most important.
The need for
common ground.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not all about, like, retreating into our separate corners and, like, you know, eyeing each other suspiciously.
Yeah.
He sees potential for cooperation.
Yeah, he does.
Even among civilizations with very different values.
Absolutely. He argues that while civilizations might have different goals, priorities, there are also areas where their interests align.
Okay.
He specifically highlights issues like nuclear non-proliferation, climate change, combating terrorism as areas where cooperation is not only possible but essential for the survival of all civilizations.
So it's not about, like, erasing our differences.
No.
But finding ways to, like, work together on those challenges that threaten us all.
The things that threaten us all, yeah.
Regardless of
your background.
Cultural background.
He's basically saying, like, look, we may have our disagreements, but there are some things that are bigger than all of us.
Yeah.
And we need to figure out how to work together if we want to survive.
It's like a pretty powerful message.
It is a powerful message.
So it's not like destiny.
No.
It's a choice.
It's a choice.
But I have to ask, like, is Huntington's theory really like a helpful framework?
Yeah, right.
Some people, some critics argue that his view of the world is just, like, too simple.
It's too simplistic.
That it lumps together, like, huge groups of people.
Yeah.
Ignores the complexities and the diversity within civilization.
Right.
Others say it's actually dangerous because it, like, reinforces these, like, us versus them narratives.
Yeah, and makes conflict seem inevitable. It's a mixed bag.
Like, a lot to unpack there.
There are valid critiques there.
I think those are, like, important critiques.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's crucial to engage with them.
To engage with them, yeah.
Huntington's theory has sparked, like, a ton of debate.
Oh, yeah, huge debate.
And there's no, like, easy answer to the question of whether it's ultimately helpful or harmful.
Right. It depends how you use it, I think.
But I think it's undeniable.
I think it's undeniable, too.
That he's raised some, like, really fundamental questions. About the role of culture in global politics.
Absolutely.
Questions that are more relevant than ever.
More relevant than ever.
In our, like, increasingly interconnected world.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a great point to end on.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Huntington's Clash of Civilizations, whether you agree with it or not, forces us to, like, really grapple with the complexities of a world where culture matters.
Absolutely.
Where identities are shifting.
Yeah.
And where the future is far from certain.
The future is uncertain.
It's a reminder that we need to be aware of these cultural fault lines.
Be aware, yeah.
Understand those dynamics of kin-country rallying.
That's a big one.
And most importantly, seek common ground wherever we can find it.
Seek that common ground.
And perhaps, as we navigate this, like, complex landscape,
we
might even discover that the real challenge is just avoiding a clash.
No.
But finding ways to, like, bridge those divides.
Build bridges.
And build a world where different cultures can
coexist.
And
even thrive together.
That's a challenge.
It is.
Worth striving for, even if it's like a long and difficult journey.
A long road.
To our listener, if you continue exploring this fascinating topic, keep questioning, keep learning.
Absolutely.
And most importantly, keep searching for those bridges that can, like, connect us, across those cultural divides.
It's all about connection.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for sending in all your stuff. It was great.
It's been a thought-provoking journey, and we hope you'll join us again as we explore
more big questions,
other complex and challenging topics that shape our world.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
Keep diving.